Alright, what's up guys? It's Robin here, and this is going to be my early mid-game guide for set 6. I know it's long overdue, but I feel like I needed to, I feel like I needed to get like a good grasp of the set. And I never felt like I got a good grasp of the early mid-game until probably now. At the time of this, at the time of the making of this video, right now, a lot of people early game, they do play the 3 Mercs early game. They do play the 3 Yodels early game, so they don't really care about early game stage 2, stage 3. But for me personally, I still play strongest board stage 2 and 3. I feel like it's a more consistent top 4 than going the Soju like Yodels, Mercs, first or 8th playstyle. So hopefully this video will help you guys out. I'm going to be going over every 1, 2, and 3 cost unit, and this is just assuming that you 2-starred that unit, so you're going to be playing around that unit. But I'm going to be going over 1-star, 1 cost, 2 cost, and 3 cost units, and letting you know what other units you want to be looking out for when you are playing around that specific unit. So before I get started, how to building a board early game, it's all about frontline backline. So I'm gonna be mentioning the term frontline backline a lot. Basically, frontline is gonna be your tanks and backline is gonna be your carries. So if you have an upgraded frontline already, like let's say you have an upgraded like Darius already, that means you're playing around. That means your frontline's already established. You're gonna be playing around bodyguards. So then immediately the bruisers that you see in shop become less valuable. So just keep that in mind. Like another example is if you have a 2-star CAITLYN, then the EZREALs in the shop will become less valuable because you're gonna be playing around snipers. Just that's like a just keep that in mind before I get into the guide. So without further ado, let's get right into it. First off, let's start with CAITLYN. CAITLYN is a sniper and enforcer, so usually you do want to be playing, when you have a 2-star CAITLYN, you want to look out for the other snipers. That includes Tristana, KOG'MAW, or MF, right? MF is a little bit harder to get because you have to level up pre-level level to 4 and above to get MF, or if you get it from an orb. So most of the time, I am looking out for the Tristana. I don't like to play KOG'MAW with CAITLYN. I feel like KOG'MAW is a pretty dead unit early game, unless you have like specific items. But with the CAITLYN, you're going to be looking for the Tristana usually, and then, so this is, your backline is already established. Your front line, you can either play bodyguards or bruisers most of the time. Bruiser is probably a little bit better because you can get enforcer in with Vi. So if you have the CAITLYN, upgraded CAITLYN, you want to look for Vi, and that means you want to look for bruiser. So you want to look for ILLAOI, Trundle, and Zac. So like the early game bruisers, and then you probably establish your early mid game. You can be playing around bruiser and snipers, right? Rarely will I play 4 snipers with MF and KOG'MAW. It's usually 2 snipers plus other units. Usually it's only 2 bruisers. Usually something like this. Your level 5 is a little bit awkward. You can just play another bruiser like Trundle. And if you get a Trundle in, you can play a scrap with like EZREAL or Blitz. You can also play a good unit as your 5th unit, like EKKO or something like this. And then with this opener, you can easily pivot into either Jhin or Urgot. Because Urgot, you have the bruiser frontline already, and then Jhin, you have the sniper backline. So it's like whatever items you end up getting. Another variation of playing around CAITLYN is you can also play bodyguard frontline. So you want to be looking out for the Dariuses, the Poppy. The good thing about bodyguard frontline is that if you're playing Tristana, you can easily fit in the Yodels, and it won't even make your board that bad. So what you can do is, I like to play ZIGGS here most of the time, and then you can play Blitz for Darius, and then you get the scrap and bodyguard. And this is a really strong transitional board into Jhin, and also generates a lot of econ because of Yodels. Next up, we have CAMILLE. Whenever you have a 2-star CAMILLE, she's just like a general good frontline tank. You don't really have to play like Clockwork Challenger around her. Like Challenger is pretty fake for CAMILLE, but if you do have the CAMILLE, you want to be looking out for the early game challengers like QUINN, WARWICK, and a SAMIRA potentially. CAMILLE will just be your frontliner, so then you'll be looking out for like any backline challenger with CAMILLE. Other units you want to be looking out for CAMILLE is going to be EZREAL, because when you have EZREAL, you want to get innovators in, which includes Singed and ZILEAN. And then if you have Singed ZILEAN in, you get a free Clockwork with CAMILLE. And you can build off that, whenever you have an innovator opener, you can easily build off this, with the scrap unit. Like you can play Trundle for scrap, and since you have Trundle, you can play Vi for bruiser, or you can play Zac for bruiser. And then if you have Zac and Singed, you have 2 out of 3 chem tech. You can usually tech in a LISSANDRA to get 3 chem tech. And then if you have LISSANDRA, you can take out the ZILEAN for Heimer. You lose Clockwork, but you get Scholar. So like whenever I have an upgraded CAMILLE, like I usually am looking for the innovator opener. And then with this opener, you can pivot into any comp in the game because it has like a lot of synergies that you're playing with. Besides innovators, yeah, it's what I talked about before. You can play challengers, so it would be QUINN, WARWICK, and SAMIRA. and you get in 4 challengers. Usually you just play 2 challengers, so maybe you can just play a SAMIRA and CAMILLE, and you can just play around this board. Adding in like, you know, you can add in Imperial maybe with SWAIN and TALON. You can add in a ZILEAN for Clockwork. If you're playing around Warwick, you can play around the Chemtech tree instead with like Singed and Zac, something like this. So that's usually what you want to look out for playing for Camille. Darius. Darius is a bodyguard, so he is a frontline tank. When you have a 2-star Darius, you can literally play any backline with Darius. So look out for units like CAITLYN, EZREAL, Twitch, Talon, any basically the damage dealers you can pair with Darius. He's also a bodyguard, so you want to look out for the Blitz, the Poppy, and the Leonas. Try to get in bodyguards. So once you, let's say you do have the Poppy and Darius, you can just play around this 2 bodyguards and try to get in like any backliners. So let's say you want to play Kate and Tristana. Then you have the Sniper Yodel board that we were just talking about earlier. Another variation for Darius is you can play the Syndicate opener, which is going to be TF and ZYRA. So you want to be looking out for the TF and ZYRA. You want to pair a bodyguard with Darius. I think BLITZCRANK is probably the best because of his tags, and you can just play the ZIGGS for Scrap and Arcanist with TF. This is a very, very common level 5 board. Let's say you do high roll the Braum. You can take out Blitz for Braum. And then you can look out for the Shaco for 5 Syndicate. EZREAL. When you have EZREAL, you do want to look out to play Innovator opener. So you want to look out for Singed. You want to look out for ZILEAN, as we talked about before. And then with this board, the possibilities are endless. You can play like Camille for Clockwork, as we mentioned before. You can also play any scrap unit, which is probably Blitz. You can play Blitz and for scrap, and then if you play Blitz, you want to pair it with a bodyguard, so probably like a Leona. But then you can also play Trundle and then pair with any bruiser like Vi or Zac. And then you can also play ZIGGS, and in ZIGGS you can get in like an Arcanist like Vex, and you can even take out the ZILEAN here to play Heimer. And then you have like 3 Innovator, 3 Yordles, 2 Arcanists, which is also really, really strong. But basically, whenever I have an upgraded EZREAL, I'm just looking to play Innovators. So I'm definitely looking out for the Singed 2 and ZILEAN. Another opener you can play with EZREAL is the Scrap opener. You're gonna be playing all the Scrap units. So it's gonna be usually it's gonna be ZIGGS, Blitz, and Trundle. This one's a little bit awkward at the lower levels, but once you get to level 5, you can pair this with any bodyguard or any bruiser. So you have an actual frontline. And then you can also, when you hit an EKKO, you can, if you have a scrap emblem from augments, you can easily get in 6 scrap, which is really, really strong. If you don't, let's say you don't have a scrap emblem, you can just drop the ZIGGS here to play EKKO, and you can just play a bruiser or bodyguard with this board. And then it's like a scrap opener. Garen, at the time of making this video, protectors are actually not that good. I mean, I don't like playing protectors early game unless I'm playing KOG'MAW reroll. So, you know, I would probably avoid picking up all the protectors. But let's say you do hit like a Garen 2 and you want to play around it, then obviously you want to look out for the Kassadin for protector. You want to look out for the Graves for Academy, and maybe like a Blitz for 3 protector. And then with this protector opener, this is going to be your front line. You can play any backline with it, right? Like again, CAITLYN. You can play snipers. You can play Sins with Twitch and Talon. You can play EZREAL. You know, whatever. You can play ZIGGS and like Arcanist, whatever. A popular backline to play with this board is going to be KATARINA, because you can easily fit in 4 Academy. If you hit like a Leona, you can play 4 Academy with Graves and Garen, and it's pretty strong. You can just play like a Talon. But the problem with this opener is that it's like a really the Sin Academy opener. It's a really awkward pivot into like most of the meta comps. A lot of the meta comps don't use any of these units in their comps, so it's kind of an awkward pivot. So that's why I rarely play around protectors. Next up, we have Graves. Graves is actually really, really strong early game, but again, like Garen, his typing is kind of weird. Graves is actually really, if you do get a GP from Orb, definitely pick up the Graves, because getting an early twin shot can help GP generate a lot of econ. But once again, if you have Graves, you want to play around Graves, you know, look out for the Garen, looking for the Kassadin. Usually you can just play Graves 2 by itself, and it's actually really, really strong early game. You know, don't worry too much about Graves typings. Like, don't try to get in like a KOG'MAW for twin shot. It's actually not that strong. Usually you just want to play like, if you have a Graves 2, you know, you want to look out for like the protectors, or you can just play like a bodyguard with like Darius and Blitz, and just have a Graves 2 on the side, like to hold your items or whatever. Next up, we have ILLAOI. ILLAOI is actually a very, very high value unit early game, because ILLAOI is a bruiser, which is like one of the best frontliners in the game right now, and also she's also 1 out of 3 mercenaries. So if you want to look out to play 3 mercenaries early game, you absolutely want to pick up ILLAOI. But if you have let's say you have an upgraded LEOI, the units you're looking for is obviously the other bruisers. So Trundle, Vi, and definitely Zac. And then this is going to be your front line, and then your back line can be anything. Again, bruiser front line can be anything. You know, it could be CAITLYN and Tristana. You get the Enforcer with Vi. You know, you can do CAITLYN and MF, which is also snipers, and you can just put in one more mercenary for mercenary. Like you can just take in like a Quinn here. You can get 3 mercs. You know, with a LEOI, you can also play a Twitch and a Talon for backline, and then you can tech in like a Zac, and then you have you're all one-off Chemtech, so you can just play the random Chemtech for this 3 Chemtech bruiser opener, which is a very, very easy transition into Urgot. So besides that, definitely also look out for the mercenaries, which is going to be GP, MF, and Quinn. So once you have this opener, a common strat right now is just to like open fort, which means to lose on purpose. If you have 3 mercs in, you just lose on purpose all the way until like 3-5, and then you all in at 3-5 once you're at like 8 loss or 9 loss, and then you just like straight up win the game. Next up, we have Kassadin. Again, at the time of making this video, protectors are pretty trash, but if you have Kassadin, just be looking out for the Garens for protector, blitz, and this is your front line, and your back line can be anything else. Another tag that Kassadin has is mutant. Sometimes you can get in an early 3 mutant in, so you want to be looking out for the KOG'MAW, and you want to look out for the CHO'GATH. So you actually can't get in 3 mutants unless you have an early CHO'GATH. So usually it's not like you're looking out for CHO'GATH when you have an upgraded Kassadin, but if you have a CHO'GATH and the mutant's good, you want to look out for the Kassadin after you get the CHO'GATH. Usually it's like that. Next up, we have Poppy. Poppy is a really, really good unit early game because her tags are really good. Bodyguard is generally a good frontline. So pair it with Darius or Blitz or Leona. And then backliners, you can play whatever. Normally, when you play Poppy, you do want to get 3 Yordles in. So you can either play around ZIGGS, and you can either play around ZIGGS Arcanists. So probably ZIGGS, and you want to be looking out for the Arcanist like SWAIN, TF, or Malzahar. You basically just play around ZIGGS. If you play around ZIGGS, Blitz, and Poppy, you get Bodyguard Scrap, and you can just put in any Arcanist. You can play Lulu usually for the 3rd Yordle. And then you can play, usually a very common opener is Malzahar right here to hold items. And then at level 6, you can play a Taric to get Enchanter. And then this is like a very, very easy pivot into like an Arcanist Lux carry, or you can pivot this into like a Kai'Sa carry. Just have Malzahar hold Morello, GA, and then, you know, at level 8 transition out of this. And you get 3 Yordles. Once you hatch Vexes, you can replace the Poppy and Blitz for Vex. You have, you just play more Arcanists like SWAIN and, you know, TF. Another variation with Poppy is going to be, you know, Poppy Blitz, and then let's say you want to play around Tristana, it'll be the sniper Yordle board that we talked about with CAITLYN. So CAITLYN, Tristana, +1, you know, plus ZIGGS for scrap. And then you have 3 Yordle, 2 sniper, 2 bodyguards, or you can do Lulu just as a 3rd Yordle. It's pretty good. And you can transition this into like Jhin pretty easily. Singe is a pretty good unit early game. As I talked about before, if you have a Singed opener, you do want to look out for the Innovator opener, which is going to be EZREAL and ZILEAN. EZREAL, ZILEAN, and like sometimes Heimer. This can be 3 Innovators, and you just build off this, like I talked about before. Another opener with Singe is going to be Chemtech opener, so you want to be looking out for the Warwicks, the Zacs, and the Lissandras. 3 Chemtech is actually extremely strong early game, so definitely look out for that. And then this is like an easy transition into Urgot. So I actually play this transition a lot. It's going to be Singe, and then like if you get a Zac, it's really good. Zac, Lissandra, you can play a Bruiser. Usually you play a Bruiser with this board, like Vi, and then you can play like a Twitch backline over here, and usually you just add in a Sin like Talon, or you can play Warwick for 5 Chemtech. TF is a backline carry, so with TF you can just, normally you do want to pair it with a Bodyguard frontline because it has Darius, so it's going to be the Bodyguard Arcanist that we talked about before with ZIGGS and TF, and then maybe you add a ZYRA level 5, and you have a Syndicate Arcanist Bodyguard opener, but you don't have to play Bodyguard frontline. TF is a backline carry, so you just have to play whatever frontline. Let's say you want to play Bruisers. You can easily play Bruisers with Vi and like a LEOI, and just play a TF backline with like a ZIGGS or like a SWAIN. So just keep that in mind, you know, frontline backline. You know, you can play 4 Arcanists with TF. If you get a lucky Vex drop, you play ZIGGS here, and you play Vex, and then you have 4 Arcanists, which is very strong. Let's say you have an Arcanist Heart, you can play Malzahar for 6 Arcanists, like an early 6 Arcanist. Just make sure when you're playing 4 Arcanists, you have at least either you need a frontline. You need a frontline, right? So the only frontliner Arcanists are going to be Vex and SWAIN. So make sure you have like a 2-star Swain or 2-star Vex before you like pivot into like a full Arcanist board. Otherwise, you just want to play like a Bodyguard, like a Poppy Blitz, or like a Bruiser. Next up, we have Twitch. Twitch is actually really strong early game, in my opinion. Twitch 2 can actually carry you, but for Twitch is a backline assassin carry, so you can play any frontline with Twitch. It's gonna be, you know, either Poppy Blitz or Bodyguard frontline, or like a Darius for Bodyguard. But I think Bruiser is way better, just because you can get Chemtech easily with Zac. So a common board I play is Zac. It's gonna be Zac and Illaoi, and then you just tech in a random third Chemtech, Warwick, Singed. They're both good to get 3 Chemtech in, and it's a really strong early game. Usually I like to pair Talon with Twitch, because Talon's the best in early game. I don't really like to play Katarina or Shaco. I think Talon's just way better and way cheaper. You can also upgrade your frontline into 4 Bruisers, so like Vi and Trundle. So 4 Bruiser, 3 Chemtech. Usually if you're carrying Twitch though, you're most likely playing Urgot. So you can just have Twitch hold the Urgot items like you know, Shiv, GA, Runons, and then this is like an easy transition into Urgot, right? The last 1-cost unit we want to talk about is going to be ZIGGS. ZIGGS is actually like one of the best early game units, I think, because of ZIGGS' typings. You have infinite openers with ZIGGS. So with ZIGGS, you can do like, you know, Bodyguard frontline, Blitz, Poppy, and you can add in a random Yordle for 3 Yordles, whether it be Tristana or Lulu or Vex. You can have Bruiser frontline. You can play a Trundle, which also gives scrap, and you play Trundle and like Illaoi, and you can play around this. But I do think Bodyguard's better because because you're playing Poppy, so you can get a 3 Yordles in, which is actually really strong. So yeah, I think I already talked about all the openers that include ZIGGS. So like maybe like an Arcanist, maybe you hit an early Malzahar, you could do this. 2 Arcanist, 2 Bodyguard, 2 Scrap, and then you just build off this board. You know, you can play a Lulu for 3rd Yordle, and then with Lulu you can play a Taric for Enchanters at level 6, and then just slowly build off this. The last opener with ZIGGS is probably the Scrap opener. So EZREAL, Trundle, Blitz, EKKO, and then just pair Bodyguard or Bruiser, whichever you hit first. Now we're going to be talking about the 2-cost units. Normally you won't be upgrading these 2-cost units, like rarely in stage 2, but this is just probably like if you are playing this unit, what you want to surround these units with. So Blitz, obviously Bodyguard, Poppy, Darius, talked about before, and then any Scrap, right? So Trundle, Scrap, ZIGGS, EZREAL, and maybe EKKO. So Blitz is like one of the strongest early game champions because he has 3 tags, Scrap, Bodyguard, Protector. So it's really easy to play around Blitz, right? You can even play Protector with Blitz. Like you can even play Garen and Kassadin. But then the problem with this board is that this is like a all frontline board and you have no damage. So make sure you get some damage in with this board. Next up, Katarina. I am rarely playing Katarina nowadays. But with Katarina, you usually just want to pair it with a Sin with Katarina, like Twitch, and you play whatever frontline with this. So Bodyguards, Darius Blitz, Bruisers, Illaoi Vi, or Protectors, right? Garen and Kassadin. Protector's probably a little bit better because you get Academy with Garen. You can't get Academy with Bodyguards unless you hit a Leona. But if you get a Leona, Leona's also good with Katarina, Leona Blitz, something like this. And you can play EKKO for Scrap with Blitz. And then, you know, Shaco for 4 Sins. Something like this. But again, like this opener is just like a really weird pivot into like the meta comps right now. KOG'MAW. I rarely play KOG'MAW early game because usually I don't have... KOG'MAW is like a really bad item holder for AD units. So you would probably item hold KOG'MAW with like a Static Shiv. That's like the only strong like early game item usually. But when I do have KOG'MAW, you want to look out for a sniper definitely. So CAITLYN, Tristana, or MF. And you just need to build a front line, right? If you're playing Ligmaw, which is a popular comp, it's going to be KOG'MAW, Graves, Garen, and Kassadin, and then CAITLYN. And you get like the twin shot with Graves, and you get the snipe with CAITLYN. And this is like the early game board where you're rerolling with. You can also try to fit in... You can also play mutants. Let's say you hit an early CHO'GATH. You can play around CHO'GATH, Kassadin, and KOG'MAW early game. And then right now, this is like level 4. Level 5, you can fit in a random bruiser like Vi. If you need more tankiness, you can fit K if you need more damage. And then level 6 is like bruiser, sniper, right? Lulu, you're usually not playing around Lulu early game. Usually you're just using Lulu for like the 3rd Yordle most of the time. So like if you have like ZIGGS, Poppy, you usually just play Lulu for the 3rd Yordle. That's like the only time you play Lulu, when you're trying to fit in 3 yordles. Like, I would never play Lulu at just like an open slot, usually. Quinn. Usually for Quinn, early game, most of the time, if you're playing around Quinn, you're probably just playing mercenaries. So ILLAOI plus MF, GP or MF. Let's say you get like a 2-star Quinn though, you want to play around Quinn. You definitely want to, like any frontliner, right? So either Bruiser, Bodyguard, or whatever, Protectors even. Bruiser is probably a little bit better because you can get in mercenaries really easily. You can also play around, your frontline can also be a 2-star Camille, and you play around 2 challengers. Upgrade to 4 challengers, stuff like that. Next up, we have Swain. For Swain, usually I'm playing Swain in an Arcanist opener. So it would be the ZIGGS, Poppy, and Blitz opener usually. And Swain is just like an extra frontline. If you get an early Vex, you can get in 4 Arcanists in pretty easily. With like Swain, Vex, ZIGGS, and like Malzahar or TF. Something like this. The Arcanist opener I was talking about before. Another opener with Swain, which is a little bit more rare, is going to be the Imperial opener, which is going to be Talon plus Samira. But this opener is like kind of rare because unless you have a 2-star Swain, you don't really have a frontline with this. So this is like a little bit more rare. But like I think if you have like a frontline with this, like a Bruiser or Bodyguard, I think you can play like around like 3 Imperials mid game. Next up, we have Talon. Talon is like a very, very strong unit early game. Usually you can just splash in a Talon and it's going to be really, really good. It's going to kill a unit or 2 for you. So, you know, playing around Talon, you literally can just play any board around Talon. You can literally play Talon in any board, but if you want to, you know, pocket synergies, you want to play Sins for, you want to play Twitch for Sins. Sometimes Katarina, sometimes Shaco, EKKO, or Shaco, but not really. Usually it's just Twitch with Talon, and then whatever frontline, Bruiser, Bodyguard, Protector, whatever. Tristana. So the opener with Tristana, it's always going to be the 3 Yordle Bodyguard Sniper, usually. So CAITLYN, usually CAITLYN, Blitz, and then Poppy. And then 1 more Yordle, so ZIGGS, for Scrap or Lulu. And then you like every time I play around Tristana, it's always this opener. And you just item hold Tristana here, like i.e. Last Whisper, and you either transition to Jhin or you can play Tristana reroll if you natural a lot of Tristanas. Trundle. Trundle is like a mix of frontline backline. He's like frontline and backline because he does a lot of damage. But with Trundle, you want to play around Bruisers. So look out for the Vi, ILLAOI, and Zac. Try to get in 4 Bruisers. You also want to activate Scrap so you can make a full item on Trundle. So usually you want to play like a Blitz with it. Or if you need more damage, like a ZIGGS or EZREAL. EKKO is probably the best early game to pair with the 4 Bruisers. And you can just item hold Trundle with like Runon's DB or something. And this board can easily transition into Urgot. Because you're playing Bruisers already. And you can just item hold the Urgot items on Trundle. The other variation is you can, instead of like building vertically for Bruisers, you can build vertically for Scrap. So you can just take out you can play only 2 Bruisers, and you play like EZREAL Blitz for 4 Scrap if you have a lot of items to scrap. Or you can play a Blitz, something like this. Alright, next up we have Vi. For Vi, again, you're playing around Bruisers, so just look out for the other Bruisers. Trundle, ILLAOI, and Zac. Something like this. Usually Vi is just holding tank items. Usually, but you can also have Vi hold AP items like Morello, Rabadon's Morello is also very good. But Vi can hold like almost any item in the game, I think. But with Vi, you also want to look out for, you know, the Enforcer. So it's going to be snipers with CAITLYN and MF. It's also pretty strong. But, you know, Vi is a frontline tank. So you can play any backliners with Bruisers. So even like EZREAL. EZREAL or, you know, Twitch Talon. Whatever. Even like, you know, Arcanists. Even Malzahar, you know, Malzahar ZIGGS. Something like this. It's already good. So, yeah. Next up, we have Warwick. Warwick is a challenger Chemtech. So when you're carrying around Warwick, make sure to get the 3 Chemtech in. So look out for Singed, maybe Twitch, Zac, Lissandra. Look out for all the Chemtech units. Also look out for at least 1 challenger to at least get 2 challengers in. So Camille, Quinn, Samira. Next up, we have ZILEAN. With ZILEAN, I'm almost always just playing Innovators with ZILEAN, so look out for the EZREAL and Singed. Something like this. And then look at the only unit that can pair with ZILEAN is early game is going to be like Camille. It's the only early game clockwork. So if you have a ZILEAN or 2-star ZILEAN, definitely look out for the Camille, and you definitely want to play innovators. Let's say you don't hit the EZREAL or Singe, you can easily just play Camille and ZILEAN just for 2 clockwork and build around that. So then probably just, you know, bruisers, Vi, Trundle, randomly. If you play, you can play like Blitz and Poppy, but this is kind of like low on damage, so you want to get in a damage dealer definitely. EZREAL, Talon, Twitch, whatever. Next up we have ZYRA. The only time I ever play ZYRA early game is if I want to proc Syndicate, so the Darius and TF, and then I'll play a ZYRA to proc get 3 Syndicate. Sometimes if I have an open slot and I don't know what to play, you can just play a ZYRA. It's a really strong standalone unit. Another time when you do play ZYRA is if you're playing around like Heimer early game and you need a Scholar, then you can just play ZYRA. But other than that, ZYRA is like rarely played for me at least. So that's all the 2-cost units. I'm gonna actually talk a little bit about the 3-cost units because sometimes you get the 3-cost units from orbs. So and then you are gonna be playing around those units. So I'll briefly talk about it, but most of the boards I've already talked about before. So CHO'GATH, you want to play around mutants usually and a bruiser. So pair it with 1 bruiser and then try to get early mutants in with KOG'MAW and KASSADIN. Usually, like I don't usually play CHO'GATH unless I'm already committed to playing mutants. In that case, I would want to look out for the mutants. I would almost never play CHO'GATH just for a bruiser because it takes up 2 slots. EKKO, if I have an early game EKKO, you know, EKKO can be splashed into literally any board because EKKO's a utility unit and it's a really strong one. But with EKKO, you know, sometimes you most likely will be playing Scrap. So you'll be playing either Blitz, EZREAL, ZIGGS, or Trundle around EKKO. And then you literally play any board with EKKO. So it's like, it's kind of hard to talk about, but EKKO's a utility unit, so just have a good balance of frontline, backline with EKKO. You should be fine. Next up, we have GP. GP is 1 out of 3 mercenaries, so if you have GP, look out for the ILLAOI for sure, and then look out for the 3rd mercenary, which is QUINN or MF. Besides that, usually when you get an early GP, you almost always want to be playing it early game because GP can farm gold for you, and then farming gold is actually super OP. So if you have GP, you want to farm more gold. Let's say you don't have mercenaries, you want to look out for Graves for sure, for Twin Shot. You can also play KOG'MAW for Twin Shot, but Graves is like way better. Getting in Twin Shot is super important for GANGPLANK because he can sometimes shoot twice and just like more likely to farm you gold. So GP is gonna be your backline carry, so you do need frontline. So if you're playing ILLAOI, you want to get in bruisers. You can also not play ILLAOI and play bodyguards with Poppy Blitz or Darius Poppy. Something like this. And then just build off that. Heimer. So if you want to play around an early Heimer, let's say you have like an early blue buff. For Heimer, you almost always want to play Bodyguard frontline because it has the Poppy and Blitz. And you can play like a ZIGGS here for Scrap, and you also get 3 Yordles in, which is really strong. Level 5, you can get in any Scholar. ZYRA, like we talked about before, you want to activate Scholar for Heimer. You can also play Lissandra for Scholar, and then you just play around that. You know, let's say you hatch a Vex. Once you hatch a Vex, you can usually drop the Poppy Blitz because your Vex is going to be your frontliner. And then now you can, you know, play around this board. So you can, let's say you hit an early Janna, you can play ZYRA plus Janna. And you can get 4 Scholar and 2 Scrap, which is actually extremely strong. You know, if you don't hit, normally you don't hit the Janna, you can play a SWAIN for more frontline. And then you can play like a TF for 4 Arcanists or like a Malzahar for 4 Arcanists. But basically, when you're playing around Heimer, it's like an AP Scholar board. So like, you just have to look out for the AP Scholar units, usually. Leona. If you get an early Leona, you're just probably playing bodyguards around Leona. So pair it with Blitz, Poppy, or Darius. And then backliners, you can literally play whatever. Sins, Snipers, EZREAL, Challengers, whatever. Lissandra. If you get an early Lissandra, it's actually really strong. You don't have to play Scholar if you have Lissandra. Basically, you want to play like a Chemtech board. So Warwick, Singed, Twitch, Zac. And then you just build off that. You're less playing around Lissandra, more about like just playing around Chemtech. But let's say you have really good Lissandra items, like you have like a Morello or Archangel and you want to play around Lissandra, you can actually just make sure to get 3 Chemtech in, and you want to get in Scholar for sure in that case. So like play like a ZYRA or something. And then this board can actually turn into like the Scholar board we talked about with Heimer. If you want to generate econ, play Heimer, ZIGGS, Blitz, Poppy, something like this. So I would say like if you get an early Lissandra, it's either you're playing around Chemtech or you're playing around Scholars. Malzahar. Malzahar is like one of the strongest units you can get early game. When you do hit the Malzahar, you definitely want to be playing around Arcanists. So you want to look out for the ZIGGS, and since you have a ZIGGS, you just create the Arcanist Yordle board that we talked about infinite times. Poppy Blitz +1 Yordle. So Lulu usually, and then once you get Vex, you can drop Poppy Blitz, and then build off that. Another for Malzahar is you can play mutants around it. So probably a CHO'GATH, a Kassadin, and then a Bruiser, something like this. Next up we have MF. MF is gonna be the mercenary opener that we talked about. So MF ILLAOI +1 mercenary, Quinn or GP. You don't have to play mercenary when you have MF. MF is a really strong early game sniper. You can just pair it with Vi and just play like pair it with CAITLYN, and you can just play Vi with ILLAOI, and it's actually really strong. 2 sniper, 2 bruisers, and you just put AP items on MF, and you can pivot this into like Kaisa, Tom Kench, or whatever. You can also stack CAITLYN with like AD items and pivot into Jhin. So you can do whatever. You can also do the Yordle sniper board with Tristana, Blitz, Poppy, and a ZIGGS. And then you have the sniper one. Instead of playing CAITLYN, you're playing MF. So yeah. Next up, we have SAMIRA. SAMIRA, early game. SAMIRA is actually really, really strong early game. You want to play a challenger with SAMIRA for sure. Usually it's going to be CAMILLE. CAMILLE 2 is probably the best because it's a frontline that procs a challenger. You can also play a WARWICK, and you can also play a QUINN. If you do play the QUINN though, definitely want to get in frontliners, such as any bodyguard or bruisers. With SAMIRA, you can also play Imperial opener. If you had a TALON and SWAIN, you can play this, but make sure you have frontline with this board, because SWAIN cannot frontline unless you have SWAIN 2. Shaco, if you get an early game early Shaco is actually really strong. With Shaco, you definitely want to play bodyguards with it because you have Darius, Darius Blitz, and you can pair it with ZYRA for an easy 3 syndicate. And then you can pair this Shaco with either a Twitch or Talon for Sins. And you can just slowly build off that. Usually I don't like to play TF for Syndicate. But if the TF gives you 5 Syndicate, let's say you hit a Braum, then it's actually pretty worth. Taric. So if you ever get a Taric early, Taric's actually really, really strong early. But he doesn't have that many tags. He gives you a free Socialite Hex. But usually Taric you just play with any board, because he just gives you a Socialite. But Taric is also good in the... Yeah, Taric is good in like literally any board. It doesn't pair with like anything usually. Like he has the Enchanter tag, but like you don't have to play Enchanter with it. Vex. Early Vex is actually really strong if you're playing AP. So if you're playing AP, the board around Vex, you always want to play ZIGGS for Arcanist with it. And then you want to play a 3rd Yordle. Usually it's going to be Lulu. So you're just playing around 3 Yordle, 2 Arcanist. And you're just building off that. So then in this board, you can play the Taric. You get Enchanter. And you can play vertical Arcanist with Malzahar plus SWAIN. You can get in 4 Arcanists like this, and you just build off that. Or you can play ZIGGS, just play ZIGGS Lulu Vex, and you can just play anything around this. Instead of Lulu, you can play Heimer, and then with Heimer you can play ZYRA with a Scholar, and you just build around that. You can even play like a Innovator with this. So it's gonna be EZREAL here. You get Scrap with ZIGGS. You want the Singed, and then this board, you get like a lot of traits with this. 2 Arcanists, 3 Innovator, 2 Scrap, 3 Yordles. You can just keep generating Econ. Play Lissandra for Scholar at level 6. And then level 7, you can play like a Zac for Chemtech. Like the possibilities are endless with Innovators. Alright, finally, this last champion we have is Zac. For Zac, Zac is like one of the strongest early game champions right now, and his tags are insane. Bruiser, Chemtech. So with Zac, you want to play activate Bruisers, ILLAOI, Vi, Trundle. And you can easily get 3 Chemtech in with any early game Chemtech, Twitch, and Singed. And then this is like a really, really easy transition into Urgot. So that's it for my early mid-game guide for set 6. Hopefully you guys can take something away from this video. I just went through all the 1 cost, 2 cost, and 3 cost champions, and like what kind of board you want to build around it, and what kind of units you want to be looking out for. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.